Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna break down a dynamic motion graphic animation. I will walk you through every step of the process, from setting up the scenes, designing the layers, to adding smooth transitions and advanced motion techniques. I will also show you exactly how I find and gather the assets and resources I use for this video, so you know how to get the same high quality materials. Whether you're just getting started with motion design or you want to push your animation to the next level, there is a lot here for you to learn. You can find the full project files and the assets linked down below in the description so you can follow along with me. With that being said, let's get started. First, go to Pinterest and search for an image of a slot machine. I chose this one and I downloaded it to my computer. Open Photoshop and import the image you selected. Click on Select Subject to select the slot machine. Choose the Quick Selection tool and hold Shift the entire time to exclude the handle part from the selection. Once the selection is ready, press Ctrl J to remove the background. Use the Quick Selection tool again to select the three reels of the slot machine. Then press Ctrl J to separate them from the background. Turn off the visibility of the layers below and export the layer. Press Ctrl Z to undo and bring back the selection of the three reels. Then click Inverse so you can press Ctrl J again. This time it will separate the three layers. Turn off the visibility of the unnecessary layers and export the layers as well. Create a new composition with a width of 1080 and a height of 9020. I accidentally created the composition size for YouTube, but I will fix it later. Add a solid layer, then apply the gradient ramp effect to it. Set the start ramp to the center of the composition and the end of the ramp to one of the edges. Change the ramp type to radial ramp. Set the start color to blue and the end color to darker blue. Then import the two images of the slot machine. Remove the visibility from the body layer. Then create a mask for each of the reels. Make sure each mask matches the size of the specific reel you're working on. Create a tall rectangle, even extending it slightly outside the composition, and make sure it's slightly larger than the first reel. Apply the gradient ramp effect to the rectangle. Set the start of the ramp to the center and the end of the ramp to one of the edges. Change the ramp type to radial ramp. Set the start color to white and the end color to gray. Using the pen tool, draw a straight gray line with a stroke wide of 3. Add the grid to the screen. Align the line so that it sits on the second row of the grid and parent it to the large rectangle. Duplicate the line and move it up 2 layers. Duplicate it again and repeat this process until you reach the top edge. When you reach to the top, move the large rectangle downward so you can add one more line at the very top. Then move the grid and pre-compose all the lines layers together with a large rectangle. Set the track mate of the pre-compose to the first reel layer. Duplicate the pre-comp. Set its track mate to the second reel layer and move it to the right to match its position. Duplicate the pre-comp one last time. Set its track mate to the third reel layer and move it to the right to align with it. Add a shape layer with a white fill and black stroke. Stroke size 5. Double-click the square shape to make it cover the entire composition. Change both size properties to 150 to create a square. Pre-compose the shape layer. Inside the pre-comp, make the layer 3D. Adjust the composition view angle to get a better view. Duplicate the layer and set its Z position to 150. Duplicate the layer again. Set Z position to 75. Rotate X rotation to 90 degrees and lower the Y position to 75. Duplicate the layer and add 150 to the Y position. Duplicate the second layer, set Z position to 75, rotate Y rotation to 90 degrees and lower the X position to 75. Move the layer to the top, duplicate the layer and add 150 to its X position. This creates a cube. At this point I realize I set the comp size to YouTube dimensions, so I will fix it now. Now, color the face of the cube. You can use any colors you like. I will color them with the classic colors of the Rubik cube. Now we'll start building the Rubik's cube. Add a null object, make it 3D, and parent all the cube layers to it. Select all the cube layers, duplicate them, and move them upward. Then, add the 150 to the X position of the null object. Duplicate the cube layers again, and this time subtract 100 from the X position of the null object. This creates a row. Now, duplicate all the layers of the row and move them upward. Select the 3 null object of the duplicate row and set their Z position to 150.
Duplicate the row again. Move the layer upward, select the tree null object of the duplicate row and set the Z position to -150. This creates a full layer of the Rubik cube. Select all the layers that make up this layer, duplicate them and move them upward. Select the 9 null object of the duplicate layer and decrease the Y position by 150 downward, which brings it to 1110. Select all the layers that make up the second layer of the Rubik cube, excluding the null object, and change their color to pink. Select all the layers of the second layer again, duplicate them and move them upward. Select the 9 duplicate null object and increase the Y position by another 150, setting it to 1260. Select all the layers that make up the third layer of the Rubik's cube, excluding the null object, and change their color to seafoam. Open the pre-comp of the tall rectangle with the strips, add the 5 icons you downloaded directly from Flatcoin, scale them down to 15% and arrange them between the rows. Add a drop shadow effect and set its opacity to 20%. Add an inner shadow effect, set its size to 10 and its opacity to 20. Copy the drop shadow and the inner glow effect to the other icons. Add the CC light sweep effect, set the center to the middle of the icon, reduce the sweep intensity to 0, set it wide to 120 and the edge thickness to 10. Copy and paste this effect onto the other icons. Add the gradient ramp effect to the puzzle piece icon. Place it above the CC light sweep effect in the effect stack. Set the start of the ramp at one of the edges and the end of the ramp at the opposite edge. Change the start color to green and the end color to a lighter green. Copy the Rubik's cube from the main comp and paste it into the comp with the other icons. Scale the cube down to 20% and position it inside the square. Copy the drop shadow and the inner effect from one of the icons and paste them into the cube. Copy the CC light sweep effect, paste it into the Rubik's cube and reset the center to the middle. Add the glow effect to the cube, change the glow color to A and B colors, set color B to white and increase the glow radius. In the main comp, delete the Rubik's cube, recompose all the layers except the solid layer and make the pre-comp 3D.
Now let's create the handle of the slot machine.
Start by creating a straight white line with a stroke of 35, make it 3D, change the bevel style to convex and set the bevel depth to 50. Center the anchor point, set the Y rotation to 90 degrees and scale the line down significantly. Move it next to the slot machine and raise the line so it covers above 2/3 of the slot machine height. Create a red circle and remove its stroke. Make it 3D and center its anchor point. Reduce its size to 2, change the bevel style to convex and set the bevel depth to 100. Place it above the road and parent it to the road. Open the comp with the slot machine icons, select all the icons and pair them to the long rectangle. Create a mask on the top part of the rectangle, press on the invert and move the rectangle downward until the cube almost exits the composition. Select all the layers and duplicate them. Move the duplicates downward, then move the rectangle along with all the layers parented upward and align it so that the bottom edge of the rectangle match the top edge of the second rectangle. This creates more rotation space for the slot machine. Go to the slot machine comp, move each reel to the top part of the comp and position each slightly differently. At frame 7, add position keyframe for all the 3 reels, move to the start of the timeline and lower all 3 positions slightly. Add the bounce expression I created to the first reel by pressing Alt and clicking on the position stopwatch.
Of course, the expression is in the video description and I will also include a link to a free tool that is much easier to use.
And paste the expression onto the other layers as well. In the main comp, go to second 2.5, add an X rotation keyframe to the road layer, move forward half second and change the rotation to 40 degrees. Move another half second forward and return it back to 0 degrees. In the graph editor, apply ease to the first part and create a sharp exit for the second part. This creates a smooth flicking animation. Go back to the first keyframe and open the slot machine comp. Add position keyframe to all 3 reels, move forward 3 seconds, lower the reels and arrange them so that the middle icon for each reel is different. Open the graph editor, create a sharp entrance and offset the last keyframe so that they don't align. add the X icon, scale it down to 12% and position it above the left icon. Go to the first position keyframe among the three and cut the previous layer. Move forward 7 frames and add a scale keyframe. Go back to the start of the layer and reduce the scale to 5%. Change the rotation to -20 degrees and add a keyframe. Move to the last scale keyframe, set rotation to 0 degrees and add the bounce expression to both scale and rotation. Move slightly backward, add an opacity keyframe, go back to the start of the layer and set the opacity to 0%. Move forward 1 second, add a scale keyframe, move slightly forward and set the opacity to 0%. Go back to the previous keyframe, add an opacity keyframe, move slightly forward and set the opacity to 0%. Duplicate the layer and move the duplicate to the middle icon. Duplicate the layer again and move the X icon above the right icon. Stagger the start of the 3 layers by 3 frames each to create an uneven entrance. Now, move the 4 icons below the scissors icon, so I can place the Rubik's Cube below the scissors icon.
I did this because in the next rotation of the slot machine, the reels moves upward and I want them to stop on the Rubik Cube.
Move to the point where the last X icon disappears. In the main comp, copy the previous rotation keyframes to create a new hand movement. Go to the first keyframe, return to the slot machine comp and add position keyframes to all the 3 reels. Move 2 seconds forward and arrange the 3 reels so that the top Rubik's Cube is centered. Open the graph editor, create a sharp ease in and offset the last keyframes so that they don't line up at the same point. Go to the first of the last 3 position keyframes, duplicate the 3 X icon layers and move them to start at the current frame. Drag the V icons while holding Alt to replace the X icon. Open the comp with the row of the icons, copy the Rubik's Cube and paste it into the slot machine comp. Move the cube so it's above the right cube in the machine. Duplicate the layer and place the duplicate above the left icon. Duplicate once more and place the cube above the middle cube icon. At the frame where the checkmark icons are full visible, move the 3 Rubik's Cube layers below the 3 checkmark icon layers and cut and delete the earlier cube layers. At the same frame, go to the raw comp, add an opacity keyframe to the cube, move forward slightly and reduce the opacity to 0%. Return to the slot machine comp, add the last opacity keyframe of the middle cube, make the cube layer 3D. Right click it and choose separate dimensions. Add keyframes for X and Y position, move forward 1 second and position the Rubik's Cube slightly up and to the left. Open the graph editor for the X position, switch to edit value graph mode, rise the start of the graph slightly above the normal range, resulting in smoother motion. Apply the same to the Y position graph. Add scale keyframe, 1 second forward, return the cube to its original position and increase the scale to 50%. In the X position graph, also rise the graph above the normal range, and do the same for the Y rotation graph. In the scale graph, rise the end of the graph slightly and shift it to the right to get a smoother motion. Return to the middle keyframe for all the layers below and add an opacity keyframe. Move forward 3 frames and reduce the opacity to 0%. At the same frame in the main comp, add an opacity keyframe to the rod layer and to the circle layer parent to it. Move forward 3 frames and set the opacity to 0%. Go back to the first opacity keyframe, duplicate the background layer and remove the gradient ramp effect, and add the 4 color gradient effect. Adjust the position of the 4 color points on the screen. Change the color to dark blue, dark purple, black and dark gray. Increase the blend value to 500 to make the background smoother. Create keyframes for all the 4 color points. Move forward 3 seconds and shift each point to the position of the previous points. Move another 3 seconds forward and repeat the movement. This creates a subtle motion effect to the background. Go back to the initial keyframes, lower the opacity to 0% and create a keyframe. Move forward slightly and raise the opacity back to 100%. Move the keyframes of the dots backward so the background moves more slowly. Open the cube comp, turn off the visibility of the bottom 2 cube layers so only the top cube layers is visible. Add a null object, change the camera angle to top view and make the null object 3D. Move the anchor point of the new null object to the center of the top part of the cube. Select all 9 null objects that make up the first layer of the cube and parent them to the new null object. This way, you can control the entire layer using the null object. Return the camera angle to active camera, duplicate the null object, return the visibility of the other layers, select the 9 null objects of the second layer of the Rubik's Cube and parent them to the new null object. Finally, duplicate the null object again and parent the 9 null objects that make up the bottom layer of the Rubik's Cube to the new null object. Change the colors of the null object controlling each layer to match the colors assigned to those layers.
And this way, we have a null object controlling each layer.
Now, change the anchor point of the middle null object to 150 and lower its position by 150 so that the anchor point of the middle null object is exactly on the center of the cube. Parent the two null objects controlling the top and the bottom layers to the middle null object. In the slot machine comp, go to the middle keyframe, switch to the Rubik's Cube comp, add Y rotation to the first null, add X, Y and Z rotation to the second null, finally add Y rotation to the last null. In the slot machine comp, move to the last keyframe of the cube, return to the Rubik's Cube comp, set the first null's Y rotation to 180 degrees, the last null Y rotation to 90 degrees, and give the middle null nearly a full rotation, slightly offset to the side. In the slot machine comp, move 1 second forward, shift the cube to the left, and rise it to the top. In the Rubik's Cube comp, rotate the top and bottom parts by half a turn and rotate the cube horizontally. In the slot machine comp, move slightly forward, copy and paste the last keyframes. Also, in the Rubik's Cube comp, copy and paste the last keyframes. In the slot machine comp, move 1 second forward and position the cube in the bottom right corner. In the Rubik's Cube comp, reset the Y rotation of the top and the bottom part to 0. Then give them a full rotation in the opposite direction. Rotate the cube half a turn horizontally and 1.5 turns vertically. Back in the slot machine comp, select the last keyframe, open the graph editor, switch to edit speed graph, and make the two last curves taper. In the Rubik's Cube comp, paste the expression to the first null and change the AMP value to 0.05. Copy and paste this expression to all other keyframes. Return to the initial keyframes, shift the second null a few frames forward, and also shift the top and the bottom nulls slightly forward. Inside the slot machine comp, increase the glow radius of the first cube layer to 300. Add the noise effect, place it above the glow effect, and increase the amount of noise to 20%. In the main comp, use the pen tool to create a purple rectangle matching the size of the Rubik's Cube purple rectangle, and center the anchor point. Apply the CC light burst effect and move the center point to the center of the cube. Increase the ray length to 250. Add the Gaussian blur effect and increase the blurriness to 30.
This creates a purple light beam that illuminates the text.
At the second when the cube stops moving, cut and delete the previous layer. Set the opacity to 0% and create a keyframe. Move 2 frames forward and increase the opacity to 50%. Copy those keyframes, move 2 frames forward and paste them. Copy all the keyframes again, move 2 frames forward and paste them again. This creates a blinking effect. Go back to the start of the layer. Inside the slot machine comp, open the composition settings, unlock the lock expression ratio option, swap the values of the height and the width, then lock it again and multiply the width by 2. Add rulers and drag horizontal ruler onto the Rubik's Cube.
Now let's start to animate the separation of the small cubes and arranging them in a row.
We will select 2 cubes from each layer. For the first layer I chose this cube. Create position and orientation keyframes for the cube null object. In the main comp, move to the last opacity keyframe of the shape layer. Move the small cube upward to the left side, placing it exactly on the ruler. Adjust its rotation so only one side of the cube is visible. Using the pen tool, create a keyframe in the middle of the cube's movement. Stretch it downward. Then click on the keyframe again with the pen tool to smooth the motion. In the graph editor, connect the curves to create a single graph with a sharp rise and fall. Go back to the first keyframe and copy the last keyframe. Select the second cube in the same layer, create position and orientation keyframe for the null object, return to the last opacity keyframe of the shape layer and paste the keyframes. Move the cube slightly to the right and position it so the orange side is visible. Open the graph editor and create a sharp rise and fall to the animation. In the first keyframes, add a scale keyframe. Then move to the last keyframe and slightly increase the size of the second cube to match the first cube's size. Do it only if the cube is too small. Go back to the first keyframe in the main comp, then switch back to the slot machine comp, select a new cube, this time from the second cube's layer, and create position, orientation and scale keyframes. Move to the last keyframe of the shape layer, copy and paste the previous cube's keyframes, this time move the cube to the right, rotate it 180 degrees to change its color, and adjust it to match the previous cube's size and positions. Copy those keyframes, return to the start, select a new cube on the pink layer, and create position, orientation, and scale keyframe on its node. Move to the last keyframe of the shape layer again, paste the copied keyframes, and position the cube on the left side. Repeat those steps for 2 more cubes on the last layer. This way you will end up with a sequence of 6 cubes, in 3 pairs with different colors. On them we will place the words forming the sentence. For each cube's movement, open the graph editor and create a sharp ease in and ease out curve. Add the text layer, type the letter R, center its anchor point, scale it up and make it 3D. Since it's now a 3D layer, it might get a misaligned. Move it up and forward, rotate it to fix the orientation and place it on the second cube from the left. Duplicate the text layer, change the letter to C and move it to the leftmost cube. Slightly reduce the size of the letters since they came out a bit too big. Move the R letter to the top, duplicate it, change the letter to E and move it 1 cube to the right. Repeat the same steps with the letters A, then T and finally another E to spell the word create.
It's important to place the text very close to the cube, otherwise the animation won't work correctly.
Parent each letter to the null object behind it so the letters move along with their cubes. Move to the first keyframe, trim and delete the layers. Create an opacity keyframe on each letter layer, move them slightly forward in time, and set the opacity to 0%. For the letter C, add a drop shadow, increase the size to 30, and reduce the opacity to 25%. Copy the drop shadow and paste it to the other letters. In the main comp, add the solid layer, go to its opacity, open the expression box, and write wiggle in parentheses 15,5. Outside the parentheses, -99. This creates a flickering screen effect. Add another solid, apply the Venetian blind effect, set transition plane to 99%, direction to 50 degrees, and wide to 8. Use the pen tool to create a mask around the slot machine screen so the Venetian blinds appear only inside the slot machine area. Move to the frame where the slot machine disappears and trim the solid layer so that they end there. Make the solid with the line 3D, recompose the shape layer of the glowing square, and make it 3D as well. Add the one node camera, go to the first X rotation keyframe of the handle layer and create a position keyframe on the camera. Move forward to the movement when the handle returns to its place, move the camera closer to the slot machine, open the graph editor and create a sharp ease in and ease out. Move to the moment when the handle starts to pull down again, create a new position keyframe for the camera, move to the last keyframe and return the camera to its original position. Go to the first last opacity keyframe, create another position keyframe on the camera. At the moment when the cube is centered on the screen, move the camera closer to the cube. Move to the frame where the cube reached the top left and move the camera back to its initial position. In the graph editor, connect the curves into a single graph and create a sharp ease in and out. Move to the frame where the cube reached to the bottom right, create a position keyframe, move 1 second forward and move the camera so that the text and cube are centered. In the graph editor, make the last curve a sharp rise and the previous one a sharp ease in and out. Inside the slot machine comp, add a drop shadow to the base layer of the slot machine, hide the background so the shadow is visible, set spread to 20%, the size to 55 and the opacity to 70%. Create a mask around the top part of the slot machine and click on the invert. Duplicate the layer, delete the mask and the drop shadow, add the text layer and write creativity as an editor in a script font. Center its anchor point and move it below the slot machine. Increase the scale to 150% and lower the opacity to 70%. At the start of the layer, create an opacity keyframe set to 0%, move forward 2 frames and set it to 70%. Move another 2 frames, copy and paste the keyframes. Move to the end of the solid layers, trim and delete the text layer, and make the text layer 3D. Trim the comp to 14 seconds, a few moments after the animation ends.
And there we go, that's it for this animation. As you saw, we ended up with high quality result that looks amazing. Thank you so much for watching and sticking around with me until the end. If you found value in this video, make sure to leave a like and comment. I usually reply to them. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out with the next tutorials. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next video.